What's going on, everyone? We are back, and like usual, there has been a lot of news going around in the sports world recently, and we are here to talk about it. But not just any sports news. It's March, so Zach, you know what that means.
Leprechauns.
Well, yeah, but it's also March Madness. The NCAA tournament is starting tomorrow. Today is Thursday, the 18th, when we are filming this, and on this show, obviously, we'd like to predict, so we had to come on and talk about the tournament that is happening next week. So with that being said, I'm Adam Avin.
I'm Zach Roisman.
And this is a special March Madness edition of Make Your Point. So obviously this is a really big deal to finally have the tournament back, and everyone's very excited, and the players are very excited, the teams are very excited, college is very excited, and obviously the tournament hasn't been here in 2 years. Last time we saw these teams play in this big tournament was 2019. Obviously last year it got canceled, right when COVID hit, March 13th. It was awful, and I know that definitely hurt a lot of seniors, a lot of people entering the draft as well. So that kind of affected, their scouting, or because you want to see the biggest players and people perform in the tournament. And you want to look for the biggest teams also. But for the first time in 45 years, Zach, Duke and Kentucky haven't made, it's the same time both of them together have not made the NCAA tournament. And this is a big deal for not only college, but for a lot of student athletes as well, who, as kids, you grow up and you watch all these superstars at these colleges, Kentucky, Duke, UNC. Obviously, UNC's in the tournament this year, but Duke and Kentucky are powerhouse schools where they get a lot of top 5-star recruits, and they bring in a lot of talent, and they bring a lot of revenue. And those are the national games that are on television. Those are the teams people want to watch. Obviously Mike Krzyzewski's there, John Calipari's at Kentucky, obviously Roy Williams is the head coach for UNC. So they're big schools, the blue schools. They're very important for a lot of people. How will them not being in the tournament this season affect not only this NCAA tournament, but for future student athletes who might have looked at those teams and said, I'm going there because I know those schools, and now they're kind of looking at them, they've diminished a little bit.
For me, I don't think it's really any effect at all. Maybe a tiny, tiny bit, but this is just picking two teams, and it's the cross index of when they haven't been in together. And so they've both missed the tournament in the past, in the recent history, not obviously often, but it's happened. And so it's not every season's going to be the A game season. And it is just one season. I'm sure they'll be back next year, both of them, and I'm sure they'll be strong again next year. So I don't think it really matters. And for the teams that are in the tournament, okay, doesn't matter. It's not like if they were in the tournament, but they're not having a good season, doesn't matter. They wouldn't have been a real competitor anyway. So I don't think it really makes a difference to the teams in the tournament or going forward.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Just a cool
I mean, it's Duke and Kentucky. They're going to be back eventually. Krzyzewski and Calipari, they know how to get recruits. They know how to coach a team. Obviously, they've won multiple championships themselves. Roy Williams for UNC, they haven't had the best year either, but they've started getting some wins late in the year, so that's why they're in the tournament as an 8 seed, I believe. But I think it's a shame for the sport that those two teams aren't in school. Obviously, Duke and Kentucky, when you think of college basketball, but those are some of the two first teams that come up right in your brain. But obviously, them being a part of the SEC and the ACC are not only two teams that are out of the tournament this year, but also two conferences that have kind of stepped away from the limelight this year. And usually those conferences are at the forefront of college basketball every year, and the teams you think of are in those conferences when you think March Madness college basketball. But obviously, because they're kind of gone this year, obviously a couple other conferences needed to step up, and those being the Big Ten and the Big 12. And the Big Ten, I got to say, first off, they have 9 schools in the tournament. That is insane. They got Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. That is absolutely insane. And the Big 12 isn't short of amazing either. They got Baylor. They got a bunch of other schools in their division too, who I'm kind of blanking off the top of my head. But within those two divisions, they have 3 number 1 seeds, a bunch of number 2 seeds, 3 4 seeds as well. Those conferences, Zach, are kind of stacked. But I want to take a look at the bracket here, and I'll put it up on the screen, and you look at the whole bracket here, but I want to pinpoint the number 1 seed specifically. So those being Michigan, Illinois, Baylor, and Gonzaga, who are in the WCC conference, an unknown conference. The only other team in the tournament from the conference is BYU, I believe. But let's take a look at these number 1 seeds real quick. So which number 1 seed do you think has the easiest path to make the championship game? Because I know since there's so many Big 10 and Big 12 teams in the conference, all these powerhouse schools that have really stepped up this year, the regions in the brackets, the 4 brackets are pretty loaded and can cause some trouble for these number 1 seeds if they get a 2 seed or someone in their conference that they faced earlier in the year who they might have lost to. So what's your take on that, and what schools do you think can make it to the end?
To me, I'm going to say that the easiest path has got to be Illinois. I think that they are maybe the best team in this tournament. They've had an amazing season. I'm going to, if I go through and I look at it, the teams that they're playing, I don't think will give them much trouble. They're playing Drexel, I know, in the first round. They'd be playing probably Loyola, Chicago, or Georgia Tech in the second round. Just going through, I don't see them really having an issue until maybe if they do get to the Final Four. I think that if they might be playing against Ohio State, and I think that would be their first hard game. But not having a really difficult game until the Final Four is a really big deal, and so I think that they have the easiest path. And the other team that I'd say has a really easy path, but maybe just slightly less easy, is Michigan. I think that they have a really easy shot too.
I'm gonna go a little opposite of you, and I'm just gonna say Gonzaga, not for the reason that everyone thinks, not because they're 26-0, but I say that because when you're 26-0, obviously, you beat a lot of good teams, and people think just because they're in the WCC or whatever, they're in a division no one cares about. They play schools that aren't ranked. Obviously, there's only one other team from their conference in the tournament. They haven't had a hard schedule. But if you look at Gonzaga, and you look at the teams that they've beaten this year, it's actually pretty insane. They beat Iowa by double digits. They beat Kansas by double digits, who's a 3 seed. Iowa's a 2, by the way. Virginia's a 4 seed. They won by 23. BYU, who's the only other team from their conference in the tournament, they beat them 3 times, and they also beat West Virginia, who's a 3 seed, I believe, as well, and during the regular season. So they played some tough teams. And if you look right now, and I'm looking at my bracket right now, first round, we don't know who they're playing yet, but we'll find out later today in those first 4 playing games. In the second round, I have them probably going to play Missouri. I have them going all the way. They're a really good team, and the most trouble I could possibly see them getting in is in the maybe the Elite 8 if you play either Kansas, Iowa, another top team there, but they beat both Iowa and Kansas. I think they're the easiest team. I think they have the easiest path definitely to get to the finals there. But like I said, Gonzaga is just a great team, and there's nothing short of amazing. So obviously we just looked at the number 1 seeds, guys. But I want to move on a little bit here. So let's go, Zach, to some specific matchups, some double-digit matchups. The lower seeds that we think might be interesting games, might be pretty close. So first, let's take a look at the 7 to 10 seed. So while we take a look at the 7 to 10 seed games here, I just want to point out that 7 seeds have won 99. Their win-loss ratio against 10 seeds is 99 to 65. So obviously 7 seeds kind of hold the title here, but 99 to 65 compared to a 1 seed versus a 16 seed is pretty close. So obviously there's a good chance. So let's look at it here. First, we got in the East region, we got UConn versus number 10 Maryland, number 7 in the West, Oregon versus 10 VCU. In the Midwest, 7 Clemson versus 10 Rutgers. South region, 7 Florida versus 10 Virginia Tech. So Zach, as we look at these 7 to 10 matchups right here, what upsets do you have by 10 seeds against 7 seeds in your bracket that might shock some people?
I mean, I will say with a 7 and a 10, it's hard to even call it an upset. And I'd say it's definitely hard to call it a shocking upset because they're really not that far apart. It's really only one off from the 8 and the 9. And so I actually only have 1 10 seed winning. But with that being said, I do think that most of the games will end up being inconsequential when you look at the next round. That if I'm wrong, I think the team will lose the next round. I think that Maryland is going to beat UConn, and I'm fairly confident in that and in Maryland just in general. But I have Clemson winning. I have Florida winning, although, by a little bit of bias there.
I still think they can win though, but continue.
You're right. I do just think they're a better team, but
yeah.
I am biased, and I think that Oregon will win. I think that Maryland is the best shot, but most of those games are pretty toss-uppy.
No, I agree. this year specifically has kind of been tough for me in trying to figure out matchups because not only have been paying close attention to the Gators, but I've paid attention to a lot more of the powerhouse schools this year, more than I usually ever watch college basketball. I don't know, maybe COVID and you're being home and you just turn on games whenever, but
Right. That's
I
now
haven't.
sports are it's
Yeah,
easier, more
but
accessible.
I haven't really paid attention to Maryland or UConn, so this is kind of tough. So I've been doing a little research, going through stats and whatnot. But I agree with you. I do have two upset. If you want to call it an upset, I have two 10 seeds beating a 7 seeds. That being Maryland and Rutgers. Rutgers is actually a very good basketball team. They haven't won many games, but they stayed close in many games.
Right. I could
Clemson,
see that one. That's probably my
yeah,
my other closest
Clemson
game.
being in the ACC, obviously UNC's in the ACC, but Duke's out. There's not too many. Georgia Tech won the ACC championship, but it's not like they had any real competition. So I don't know. I have Rutgers winning in that game. They're actually a good basketball team. Maryland, I just feel like always every year we always see Maryland win a few games or something. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like they're one of those teams that like they're a tournament team. You get in there and you win some games. But either way, you look at the 7 to 10 seeds, and the 2019 tourney, which was 2 years ago, was the first time since 2010 that number 10 seeds won 3 out of the 4 matchups with number 7 seeds in a single tournament. So obviously in recent history, very recent history, the 10 seeds have kind of gotten the win. So saying 2 or even 1 10 seed upset isn't that big of a possibility. So let's move on. Let's go here to the 6 versus 11 seeds. Now let's look at the win-loss ratio of 6 and 11 seeds. The six seeds have won 102 games, as the 11 seeds have only won 58. So obviously that's a 50 game difference there all time. So a little bit different. But again, let's look at the matchups here. We got in the East region, number 6 BYU versus Michigan State or UCLA. We don't know who's going to win that game yet, but that game is being played tonight. A lot of the points, a lot of the points go to Michigan State. They just won the Big Ten championship, going through Michigan, going through Illinois to win that. So obviously they kicked off some really high talent to win that, and Tom Izzo's team should be very proud of themselves. And I do think they're going to beat UCLA and be in the tournament, but we'll get into that in a little bit. USC versus Wichita State or Drake. We don't know who's winning that game yet, but USC is a 6 seed and they've been pretty consistent this year. They're actually one of the tallest teams in the tournament, the highest dunking teams in the tournament. They got Evan Mobley, a center down there, a great defense. So
USC is very strong.
Midwest region, we got number 6 San Diego State versus 11 Syracuse, and South region we got number 6 Texas Tech versus 11 Utah State. Zach, what upset do you have in this bracket?
I actually only have one, and I would like to have more, but I can really, the only one I see, assuming Michigan State beats UCLA, and I do think that they will. I see them beating BYU as well. I don't think BYU is really that strong of a team. I think they're in a mostly fairly easy conference, obviously minus Gonzaga. And so for me, that's the other one. And then the other closest one I would say is probably going to be San Diego State versus Syracuse. Syracuse is very efficient, but at the end of the day, San Diego State is a very, very strong defensive team.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Syracuse will be able to penetrate that. And then on top of that, San Diego State is really capable when it comes to scoring as well. And I just don't think that Syracuse will be able to fend it off. I do want to call to attention the USC game, and I do think that they're going to win without much issue. Mm-hmm. That's a very strong team, and I think they were a little bit, I don't want to say screwed, but they were a little bit disadvantaged by their placement in the bracket that, in the next game, they're most likely going to have to play Kansas. That's a team that in another position could go very far, I think, and they kind of got a little bit disadvantaged.
No, I agree with you. This is another thing I've kind of struggled with trying to pick here. Obviously, I said for the 7 and 10 seeds that, the meetings between them have kind of been up and down in recent history. You'll see some 10 seeds winning. It's very much the same here with the 11 seeds as well. 2019 tournament marked the first time since 2013 that number 6 seeds won at least 3 of the 4 meetings against 11 seeds in a single tournament. So this is actually saying in very recent history, obviously since 2013, that 11 seeds have kind of been in control. They've actually been beating a lot of 6 seeds there, but and I do in my bracket as well. I actually have, like you said, I do think Michigan State is going to be the team in there, and I do think they're going to beat BYU. I think they're a very complete team, and I just think they got the ball rolling late. Obviously, a lot of teams dealt with COVID and restrictions and traveling and stuff this year, and we'll get into that in the show later. But Michigan State, I do think they're a better team than BYU. BYU is in an easy conference. Gonzaga whooped their butts, and and obviously it wasn't much of a competition there. But obviously they're a 6 seed because of their record. They're a known college. They won some games, but I do see Michigan State beating them. If UCLA's in there, that's something to talk about, but it's going to be really difficult for everyone to go and change their brackets tonight. When they realize that Michigan, they have Michigan State going all the way to the Final Four, and now we have to go back because it's UCLA. But I do have Michigan State winning there. USC I have winning 6 seed, so not an upset there. Syracuse I do have beating San Diego State, and the only reason why is because they're actually a very talented team. Jim Boeheim, they can score the ball really well. San Diego State, they do hold their opponents low points, but Syracuse and San Diego State both score around the same amount of points. And I just think that if they kind of get the ball rolling early, then I think they can hold on to the lead. They just have to make sure to not slip up and turn over the ball. Syracuse is a good program, and they've won games before. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a small run in this tournament as well. So now let's go to the 5 versus 12 seeds, and the 5 and 12 seeds we've seen in recent history too. A lot of people pick 12 seeds. I certainly pick 12 seeds, and I do have some in my bracket too.
I make a point of it. If I don't have enough 12 seeds winning, I have to go back and fix it.
I don't know. Something about the 12 seed. It speaks to me. But obviously the win-loss ratio is pretty large as well. If you look at all-time record, 107 wins for 5 seeds, only 53 for 12 seeds.
Although it should be noted that in the last tournament, 3 out of the 4 12 seeds did win in the first round.
Yes. So obviously, again, very recent history. Things change. Other teams win, and like we said before, something about the 12 seeds just kind of speaks to me. But here, let's go right here. So we got the 5 versus 12 matchups up on the screen. East region 5 Colorado versus number 12 Georgetown. West region 5 Creighton versus 12 UC Santa Barbara. Midwest region 5 Tennessee versus 12 Oregon State, and South region 5 Villanova versus 12 Winthrop. So Zach, I'm gonna go here first because I just want to make sure I explain myself real quick. I picked 2 games in the 5 and 12 matchups that I think will be upsets, that I think a lot of people will probably have picked the other 2 to be the upsets just by when you research or look at the team scoring or how many points they hold to the team. But for some reason, these 2 teams spoke to me. The first one being Georgetown. Georgetown, led by Patrick Ewing. Obviously, they just smacked the everything out of Creighton.
Absolutely.
In the Big East championship. Patrick Ewing became the first person ever to win the Big East championship as a player and a coach. Congratulations to him, and he did a very good job coaching his team. They dealt with some COVID stuff early in the year. They dealt with some injuries early in the year. They lost some games. They weren't ready, but as the season went on, they started winning some games, and winning the Big East championship was very crucial for them, I think. And I think it gave them a lot of motivation and got the ball rolling. If you look at Colorado, they are actually not an amazing team. The conference that they're in isn't too difficult. I think they're just a known college. They got some recognition. They've been good in recent years, but this year specifically, I don't think they can match up to Georgetown. So I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Colorado lost to USC like 3 times, and Colorado's ranked ahead of USC. So I do have Georgetown winning in that one. And the other one I have winning, which might be a surprise, but I have UC Santa Barbara.
No, Colorado beat USC 3 times.
Colorado beat USC 3 times, but I think that was their only win, like their only good wins. I don't think they had any other impressive stuff. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I do think Georgetown is going to win in that one. But in the other game I have in the 5 versus 12, I have UC Santa Barbara beating Creighton. And the only reason that is because Creighton, if you look at Creighton, they're a very good shooting team. But if you look at Creighton as a 3-point shooting team, the best in the Big East, you're wrong, because the best Big East 3-point shooting team is actually Georgetown. So if Georgetown can shoot the ball like they've been and like they did against Creighton, basically, I can see them going pretty far. I do see them winning in this matchup. But like I said, Creighton isn't actually, they're very average. If they go up against a team that can score a lot and put some pressure, cause some turnovers, I don't see why they can't lose. Obviously, their coach said some insensitive racial things earlier in the year, got suspended for a week or 2. So that kind of caused some tension in the locker room. And that was right before the Big East championship where they lost by 40 to Georgetown. So I think going into the NCAA tournament, it's kind of, everything that I just explained is kind of a little bit detrimental to their chances. That's why I have UC Santa Barbara winning. UC Santa Barbara can actually score the ball very well. And if they can put up their shots and, they have a couple good players on the team who average double-digit points, and, they're going to have to come out and perform. And I genuinely think that they can be one of them. Another one I was tossing with, but I ended up sticking with the higher seed. lower seed. I mean, I kept Villanova, but I was leaning towards Winthrop. Winthrop actually puts up 80+ points a game. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the tournament. They play in an easy conference. Villanova has definitely had their struggles this year, very much so. But Winthrop has just been, I don't know. They haven't actually played a top 75 team, I think. So they have had no real competition. That's why they've been scoring out of their minds and playing against literally no defense. But if Villanova does get into some trouble and they let Winthrop score like they've been scoring, and maybe they're like a Gonzaga team where they play in a crappy conference but are actually really good because they can score and make a lot of plays, then I don't know. It could definitely happen. I see that happening. But in my bracket, I stuck with Villanova. So I have 2 upsets in the 5 versus 12 matchup. What about you, Zach?
I mean, mine's mostly pretty similar. I have Creighton winning actually. As much as I have very little confidence in Creighton, I have even less confidence in UC Santa Barbara. And I know that they're hot. They are hot, but at the end of the day, Creighton is just a program that is a stronger program for basketball than UC Santa Barbara is. And I think that experience playing against better teams is going to give them that win. And I will say, whoever wins this game is going to then have a decent chance of making it pretty decent, a decently far run in. And so then my other wins, I agree with you that Georgetown's going to win. Colorado is, while a very strong team, they're having a great season. I think that Georgetown is just really hot at the right time, and they're going to pass Colorado, and I don't think it'll even be that close either. I actually have Villanova beating Winthrop. At the end of the day, same thing I said about Creighton. They're just a stronger franchise. I think that the coaching is going to make a really big difference, and it's going to push them over. And then I do actually have Oregon State beating Tennessee. Tennessee is, again, having a great season, but this is one, and you keep saying it spoke to me. It spoke to me. I think that as I'm sure you know, Tennessee has been very inconsistent this season, and I think that could be a real problem going in. Of course, it could end up helping them, that if they're on the better side of that, then it's great, but if not, that's terrible. I'd say Oregon State, most notably, they upset Colorado, in their championship. So I think that's a pretty big deal going into this, and that spurt, of confidence maybe that you have, I think it helps a lot. And so I have them winning.
No, yeah, you're definitely right. And Georgetown, I do see them going pretty far, and I want to get into that right now, actually, because with the path that Georgetown has, and let's not just limit it to Georgetown. I want to talk about any double-digit team that you think might actually go pretty far. And obviously, we just went into specifics here, but I'll let you go first since you're very antsy over there. Whatever. How many teams that are double-digit seeds? Let's say obviously 10 through 16. Except I don't know how many 16 seeds you have going far, but
no, it's none.
how many double-digit teams do you have causing some upsets and shaking up the tournament a little bit?
I will say it's for the most part, once we get out of the first round, I really refrain from upsets, but there is a notable exception. I am very confident in Maryland this year. And if they disappoint me, I will be very disappointed. I have them going all the way to the Elite Eight, where they will be knocked out by Maryland. But for me in my bracket, there's a couple notable upsets by them. First they're going to beat UConn, but then they're going to upset Alabama for me. And then, because Alabama's a 2 seed, then they're going to play 3 seed Texas, upset them, and go all the way to the Elite Eight, where they will eventually lose. That's my big pick. There's a couple of others. I do see Ohio beating Virginia, although I do see them losing in the second round. Although I do think it's notable that depending on the result of the Creighton and Santa Barbara game, that could mean that Ohio has a chance at making it even to the Sweet 16. I'd say those are my 2 most notable picks for a double-digit team for sure.
Yeah, I want to bring something up here real quick. And you just brought up Ohio, and I love Ohio right now in this matchup. And the reason is because of the point guard that they have, Jason Preston. Jay Billis, I believe, has referred to Jason Preston as, the LaMelo Ball of the tournament, the star. He can do anything. Just he lights it up. He does it all. He's a triple double guy, basically. He is 16, 7, and 7, and he scores more assists or rebounds or whatever game they're playing. But he kind of made them relevant this year. He was unscouted, going into college. Ohio got him and walk on, and he's done some unbelievable things. The most unbelievable thing they have been in some tough games. They lost to Illinois by 2 points. Ohio lost
Yeah, that's
unranked
super,
school,
super
nothing.
notable for me. And I
They
didn't mention
lost
that.
They lost to Illinois by 2 points,
Right.
considering they also score 80 points a game. They hold their opponents to 73 points a game, which is a lot, but they score more. They're playing Virginia in the first one. Obviously, Virginia's a 4 seed. They're 60. They score 60. They hold their opponents to 60 points per game, and they score a little close to 70 points per game. The thing that stands out to me with Virginia, though, is they lost to Gonzaga by 23. They lost to Florida State by 21. And
right.
they lost to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is who the Gators are playing. They obviously they're rivals. But they beat Georgia Tech, they beat North Carolina, Clemson, whatever. But the good teams that they're playing lost. And Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Clemson aren't teams that score a lot of points. They're good basketball teams, but they don't score a lot of points. Ohio, 80 points per game. If Jason Preston plays the way that he's supposed to play, I don't see why they can't beat them. And obviously, and also, by the way, one more thing. They are dealing with some COVID stuff right now. They are not getting on the plane and flying to Indianapolis for the tournament until tomorrow when this tournament starts taking place. Luckily, they don't play their game until Saturday, so no replacement or anything has to go in for Virginia. But none of their players are getting out of quarantine until early tomorrow morning or late today when we're filming.
And that is a disadvantage.
It is an extreme cut. You're flying across. You're flying across the country, not across the country.
Fatiguing.
Fatigue. You're gonna land, and the next day you got to jet lag. You wake up. You got to play against Jason Preston and this huge scoring offense. Try and keep up with them. I think there's a lot of disadvantages for this Virginia team right now, and just by looking at the stats too, a 13 seed has beaten a number 4 seed in 25 of 35 years. In the past 2 tourneys, 5 of the 8 matchups were decided by single digits. So obviously that's very important right there. And if all these causes with Virginia are true and they're going to be extremely fatigued and won't be able to keep up, I don't see why not Ohio is the 13th seed that will win in this tournament this season. Obviously all these stats we're getting are from ESPN, guys, shout out ESPN. So that is definitely a big upset, and
they really need our shout out.
Yeah, I know, definitely, but I have them. Like I said, I had UC Santa Barbara winning. So if Ohio wins, they play each other in the second round, in the round of 32. I have Ohio winning that game, and I have them going to the Sweet 16 where they lose to Gonzaga. So obviously I have them going a little bit farther than I probably most people probably have, but I do see them winning some games led by Jason Preston. The other team I have winning, which I don't actually have winning that many games, but I do see a scenario as to where they can go pretty far. And I already mentioned them earlier, and I stopped talking about them for a second, is Georgetown. I do see Georgetown going pretty far. In the first round, Georgetown has Colorado. I think they're winning that game. Second round, they play at Florida State. Georgetown, their stats are very similar. Okay, they both score 70 points. They both hold their opponents to 70 points a game, which means defensively they're both very there. And offensively, Georgetown scores around 71, while Florida State scored 78. But Florida State, they beat Virginia, they beat North Carolina, Georgia Tech. They've beat some team. But Georgetown, they beat Creighton twice. They beat Villanova. Obviously they've had some bad losses like UConn, Syracuse. So obviously, but like I said, I think Georgetown could just be on a real roll. And in my bracket, like you said, Zach, after the first round, I'm kind of skeptical about upsets unless I know a team for sure is like kind of misguided, like Michigan State, I think, like an 11 seed who is clearly winning games and beating really high seeds, where if they match up with those seeds again, could definitely beat them. But Georgetown isn't that team for me. I'm not extremely confident where I could see them, or at least put them in my Final Four. I actually made another bracket with my prediction and sticking with my gut and having them go all the way. But in my main bracket, the one we're in with all of our friends and everything, I have Georgetown going out in the round of 32 to FSU. But Georgetown, that is definitely a scenario that I see them being able to go pretty far.
Right. And I will say, you reminded me, I forgot to mention this about Maryland, is that one of the key games that leads me to, and I know it's just one game. I know that then it was an upset, and it would be an upset if it happened again, but it gives me a lot of confidence then, is that they beat Illinois, who I personally see as the strongest team in the tournament. Even though it was a very close win and just a big upset, you could say it's a fluke. I think it's a sign. I'm not saying they're winning it all. I'm saying they're going far. And if they lose in the first round, I'm going to throw something at the TV.
Now we want to move on to our predictions, Zach, of our Final Four and our winners. So first off, why don't you give me your Final Four and talk about, why you got them in there.
All right. Well, I don't want to say pretty confident that this is going to be the Final Four, but I have a good feeling about each of these teams.
Mm-hmm.
I have Gonzaga, Michigan, Ohio State, and Illinois. Now, Gonzaga obviously is extremely strong. I think that they're maybe the second best team in the tournament. They are fantastic. Obviously, 26-0. You mentioned that earlier. I actually think that they're gonna have a tougher game in the Elite Eight versus Kansas than they will against Michigan. Even though I know Michigan's good, we don't know if they're gonna have that full roster yet. Gonzaga is very strong, and I think they're gonna be able to beat Michigan without too much difficulty there. Then I have Ohio State and Illinois. Ohio State is a really good team. And to get there, they'll have to beat Baylor, who's a 1 seed. And I think that they're the weakest 1 seed, and it's not close. I think there's a significant drop between Baylor and the other 3 1 seeds. And I think Ohio State is significantly better. But Illinois is my other team in the Final Four. And as I mentioned, I think they're the single strongest team in this bracket, which then leads me to having Gonzaga and Illinois playing. And I have Illinois winning 67-3. With that being said, I think that most of these are going to be pretty close. I see Gonzaga and Michigan being a game decided by less than 10 points. I see Ohio State and Illinois the same, being decided by less than 5, actually. And so I think that it is, I don't want to say a toss-up because, again, I am fairly confident, but I do think that it will be close, tough wins for these teams.
I like your Final Four. I don't have anything to criticize about it. I know we're supposed to debate or talk about stuff, but I don't. It's fine. But what I will say is, here, let me give my Final Four. So from the top, I got Gonzaga. Then I got Alabama, which I'll talk about that in a second.
I have them getting upset so far back that it's hard for me to even consider if they don't get if they win the game that they're most likely going to win versus Maryland, then that changes my Final Four a bit.
Well, so I got Gonzaga coming out of the West. Sorry, I got Alabama coming out of the East. I got Baylor coming out of the South, and I got Illinois coming out of the Midwest. So Gonzaga, obviously, and here's where my superstitions come in a little bit. The last time, obviously, Duke and Kentucky didn't make the NCAA tournament was in 1976 when Indiana went 26-0 going into the March Madness tournament and won the whole thing, staying undefeated, winning 32-0. Gonzaga this year, it's 2021, 45 years later. Gonzaga's 26-0 going into the NCAA tournament. Duke and Kentucky are not in the tournament, which is the exact same what happened when Indiana won undefeated, went 32-0. I'm just very confident that no team will be able to beat Gonzaga. That only just reassures myself that that is what is going to happen. So I'm very set on Gonzaga, but not just because of that. They're led by Corey Kispert, who's a great basketball player. He made the all-college, first team or whatever. Jalen Suggs, who's just unbelievable. He's going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. That point guard is just amazing. And obviously they're 26-0. Obviously they play in a bad conference, but like I said, they beat Iowa, they beat Kansas, they beat Virginia, they beat BYU 3 times and West Virginia. They got a series of strong wins right there that just make me extremely confident that whatever team they face, they'll be able to match up very well against. The other team I have is Alabama. I have Alabama beating Michigan. Actually, let me rephrase that. I have Michigan losing in the Sweet 16. I originally, as of a couple hours ago, Zach, when I started going through this and we started prepping for the show, I had Michigan in my Final Four. I had 4 1 seeds in my Final Four. And then I started to really think about it because Isaiah Livers, their starting point guard, is out with a foot injury, a stress, something in their foot. He's their best player. He's a senior. He averages about 13 points a game, I believe. He's just unbelievable. Without him, obviously, I think they have this other kid with Hunter Dickinson, I think his name is. He's their center, I believe, and he's been really good. He's their best player, I think. But Isaiah Livers, without him, he's the scorer, and I don't think without Isaiah Livers kind of managing that offense, I don't see them winning or going that far unless he comes back. But again, there's no way to predict. Once the tournament starts and we all submit our brackets, if he comes back halfway through, I think everyone's kind of screwed. but you got to go with your
Right.
gut. So I have Florida State beating them in the Sweet 16, as much as I hate to say it.
I think that's totally fair.
And then I have Alabama beating Florida State and going to the Final Four. So Alabama's in there, but still Alabama.
Well, yeah, in that scenario, I agree with you.
Yeah, Alabama, exactly. Yeah, Alabama's an SEC team. They're known for football. Obviously, this year they turned themselves into a basketball school. They're playing great basketball.
They've been good at basketball in the past.
But this year
they're exceptional.
Avery Johnson was their head coach, I believe. They fired him. They brought in a new guy. Some new recruits too. They got a transfer from Georgetown. I forget his name. Send to JQ, whatever. That's his Instagram handle, I think. But he's a really good point guard. But they're in there. Baylor I have in there. The reason I have Baylor in there is because they actually beat Illinois earlier in the year. They're actually a very good team. As much as I was tossing and turning about having Ohio State in there, which I do believe Ohio State can go in there. They also beat Illinois, Michigan, Iowa, Purdue, Wisconsin. Ohio State beat some really good teams as well. Baylor also beat Illinois, Kansas, Texas Tech, Texas, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Another range of very good wins for them. They hold their opponent. The thing that really struck me here in the Elite Eight, Ohio State versus Baylor with that matchup, Baylor holds their opponents to 66 points a game, and they score about 85 points a game. Ohio State holds their opponents to 70 and scores only 77. If Baylor plays the basketball that they've been playing and can keep those averages or score or hold their opponents to even less, they're going to win. And I know there's some skepticism. I do think that if Isaiah Livers is there, I would say that Baylor is probably the worst one seed in my opinion. I just don't think just by the eye test they've done enough. But I do have them going to the Final Four, but I have them being beaten by Illinois. And Illinois, I do think is a great team. They have Ayo Dosunmu, who's obviously a great player. He's going to go very high in the draft as well. He leads that team to every win. But he actually went out with an injury earlier in the year with a nose injury or something. And they won like 3 out of their 4 games that he missed. Like they have a really great squad that they put together. When Ayo Dosunmu's hurt, they have a really good team that can come together and pull up some wins for them. Hopefully he's not hurt. Hopefully he can play to his full stability. And I think if he does, I do think they're going to go very, very far. And that's why I want to move on to the championship game right here. And I think we have the same championship game, but with a different outcome. I have Gonzaga in the championship and Illinois in the championship, but I have Gonzaga winning with the tiebreaker being 78-73. They're both two good defensive teams, both two good.
Oh, that's close to my score. I have
two good offensive teams, but I have them in there with that score just because I think they can. It's going to be a battle. It's definitely going to be a battle, but I don't see any other teams beating those two teams. I think Ayo Dosunmu, what he did with that team is insane. I think what Corey Kispert and Jalen Suggs have done in Gonzaga with Mark Few as their head coach, leading them to the 26-0 and coming to the NCAA tournament undefeated is absolutely unbelievable. And that's why I have them in there. I do think they're going to make a real strong push for the championship, both those two teams, but I ultimately have Gonzaga winning in the end.
Mm-hmm. I respect that. I do. And there's a few points where one game for me just changes, so much that if Maryland, I hate to say if Maryland does not upset the 2-seeded Alabama, then a lot of parts of my bracket would change a lot. I would then have Alabama going pretty far. So I would definitely say that's an issue every year, and everyone's got that same disadvantage.
For sure. Well, yeah. So you got Illinois, I got Gonzaga. We're all on a bracket with all of our friends. I know
Adam will be in last place.
I will be in last place, which is actually opposite day. So it's first place, but
today is not opposite.
But a lot of our friends have, some other people winning. We have obviously 2 1 seeds winning. Obviously, it's very rare for all 1 seeds to match up. The last time 2 1 seeds played a game against each other, I believe, was back in 2018. So it's been a few years. Obviously, there wasn't a tournament last year, so let's say 2 years. But who knows? It's a weird year. I think a lot of there might be some upsets. We already predicted some. There might be some just very straight winners all the way. The lower seed, meaning like the lower number 1, 2, 3, 4, can go all the way, which can definitely happen. And we are very excited to see what is going to start happening tomorrow and on throughout the next couple of weeks. I'm Adam Avin. That's Zach Roisman. Follow us on all our social media to stay updated with all of our YouTube content and Instagram content. We will see you guys for our next episode. Apologies to our dear friend Shaquille O'Neal. Sorry we couldn't get you on the show this time, man, but we will try next week.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.
And remember the golden rule.